Professor Rex Series 01 Season 01 Episode 01. What your body is trying to tell you when you wake up at 3 a.m. Scientific references. Harvard Medical School, Division of Sleep Medicine. Research on sleep fragmentation in aging and reduced deep sleep after age 60. National Institute on Aging, NIA, age-related changes in sleep patterns, including circadian phase shift. Stanford Center for Sleep Sciences and Medicine. Studies on nighttime cortisol and sleep disruption in older adults. Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism. Nocturnal glycemic variations and microarousals in adults over 60 years of age. American Sleep Apnea Association. Prevalence of undiagnosed sleep apnea in adults over 65 years of age. National Institutes of Health, NIH, dehydration in the elderly and its impact on sleep quality. Journal of Affective Disorders. Relationship between grief, loneliness, and sleep fragmentation in older adults. Journal of Hepatology. Circadian rhythm of the liver and peaks of metabolic activity between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. Opening. Have you ever woken up at exactly 3 in the morning, looked at the clock, and wondered why this keeps happening? Maybe it's the second night in a row. Maybe the 10th. You don't know what woke you up. There was no noise, no nightmare. Nothing that could explain why your eyes simply opened at that exact time. And now you're there, lying in the dark, listening to the silence of the house, with a mind that stubbornly refuses to slow down. Is it just a coincidence? Is it a sign that you're getting old? Or is your body trying to send you a warning that you haven't yet noticed? Most people ignore this moment. They turn to the other side, close their eyes tightly, and try to convince their brain to return to where it was. Some stay awake for hours. Others fall asleep, but wake up again feeling that strange sensation that the rest was not complete. And in the morning, when they get out of bed, there is a different kind of fatigue. One that doesn't go away with breakfast. Many elderly people believe this is normal, that it's part of aging, that waking up at 3 in the morning is simply something that happens when you get older. But some experts think differently. And what I'm going to show you today can completely change the way you see those early mornings. Because there's a specific reason, sometimes more than one, that tends to appear more frequently between 2 and 4 in the morning. And it might surprise you. It might even seem like I'm talking directly about your life. Stay with me, because the last piece of information in this video might be the most important of all. Block 1. The 3 a.m. mystery. To begin to understand what happens during that quiet time, we first need to talk about something your body does every night without you having to think about it, without you having to control it, without you even realizing it. It's an ancient, sophisticated, and perfectly synchronized system, or at least it should be. Imagine your body as an orchestra. Each instrument represents an organ, a hormone, a chemical process. When everything is in tune, the music is harmonious. Sleep comes smoothly, the hours pass without interruption, and you wake up feeling that your body has done the work it needed to do. But when any instrument starts playing out of time, even if it's just one, the result can be exactly what you're experiencing. Waking up in the middle of the night without knowing why. This system is called the circadian rhythm. It's your body's internal clock, and it's not a metaphor. There is literally a group of cells in your brain, in the hypothalamus to be more precise, whose sole function is to keep time. These cells respond to light, temperature, food, and movement. They orchestrate when you should be awake, when you should be asleep, when your body should produce certain hormones, and when your organs should work more or less. Why does this always happen at the same time? That's one of the questions I get asked most often. And the answer lies precisely in this internal clock. Between 2 and 4 in the morning, there are natural transition periods in sleep cycles. You leave a deeper sleep phase and enter a lighter phase, known as REM sleep, the dream sleep, the sleep where the brain processes emotions, consolidates memories, and reorganizes information. During this transition, any disturbance, however small, can be enough to make you cross the line between sleep and consciousness. And this is where the issue of aging comes in decisively, because after 60, this internal clock starts to function differently. Not necessarily worse, just different. Researchers at Harvard Medical School have discovered that deep sleep, that most intense restorative phase of the body, begins to gradually decrease from middle age onwards. At the same time, the circadian rhythm tends to advance, meaning you may start feeling sleepy earlier at night and wake up earlier in the morning. But it also means that the structure of your sleep becomes more easily fragmented. Why do some people fall back asleep easily and others don't? This difference isn't random. It depends on a number of factors that we'll explore now. Some are physical, others are emotional. Some are habits you've had for decades without realizing they're interfering with your sleep. And at least one of them, I'm almost certain you've never associated with waking up at 3 in the morning. And the next sign often surprises even experts. Block 2, sign number 1. The stress you don't even notice. Let me tell you about a man named Robert, 72 years old, retired for 6 years, living in a small town in rural Tennessee. Robert liked to say that retirement was the best thing that ever happened to him. He had time to walk, to read, to work in the garden. The children lived in other states, but they called every week. His health was reasonable. Nothing serious, nothing urgent. But every night, without fail, Robert would wake up around 3. He would stay there for an hour, sometimes 2, my mind racing. Worries that seemed small during the day became enormous in that silence. A bill due the following week. A doctor's appointment scheduled for next month. The memory of a friend who had died the previous year. Thoughts he didn't even know were piling up. Robert believed he was fine, and in a way he was, but his body knew something he hadn't yet acknowledged. A silent stress was setting in. A stress that doesn't scream, doesn't warn, doesn't present itself as anxiety. It simply exists, submerged, processed during the hours when the mind should be resting. The culprit has a name: cortisol, the so-called stress hormone. During the day, cortisol has a vital function. It gives us energy, focus, and responsiveness. But at night, its production should decrease drastically, allowing melatonin, the sleep hormone, to take over. The problem is that when there is accumulated stress, when there are unprocessed worries, when there is loneliness or anxiety that the person doesn't even recognize as such, cortisol doesn't decrease as it should, continues to circulate. And between 2 and 4 in the morning, there is a natural cortisol peak that is part of the body's biological awakening. In people without accumulated stress, this peak is mild enough not to interrupt sleep. In people with elevated cortisol, it can be the exact trigger that makes their eyes open. Robert's discovery was gradual. It wasn't a dramatic diagnosis. It was an honest conversation with his doctor, who asked a simple question: "What's worrying you, even if it seems small?" And Robert realized there was much more than he had admitted. The distance from his children, the feeling that the days were all the same, the longing for a routine that gave purpose. Things he had dismissed as nonsense, but which his body, in all its wisdom, had filed away as urgent. Does this resonate with you in some way? Because loneliness, family worries, losses that haven't been fully processed, all of these things have a nighttime address. And that address is usually 3 in the morning. But there's another culprit that most people never associate with nighttime awakenings: and it has to do with what you ate for dinner. Block 3, sign number 2. Your blood sugar may be fluctuating. When you hear the expression blood sugar level, you probably think of diabetes. And if you don't have diabetes, you probably dismiss that possibility completely. But what many people don't know is that blood sugar fluctuations during the early morning hours can interfere with anyone's sleep, regardless of whether or not they have a diabetes diagnosis. Look closely. When you eat dinner, your body absorbs the carbohydrates from the meal and converts them into glucose. The pancreas releases insulin to process this glucose, and blood glucose levels rise and fall over the following hours. If dinner was too late, or if it was rich in high glycemic index foods, or if you went many hours without eating and ate dinner when you were very hungry, this fluctuation can be more abrupt than normal. Here's what happens at 3 in the morning. If your blood glucose has dropped below the ideal level during sleep, a state doctors call relative hypoglycemia, your body interprets this as an emergency. It releases adrenaline and cortisol to signal your liver to release glucose stores. And this emergency signal is strong enough to wake you up. You don't know why. You might feel your heart racing slightly, maybe a slight feeling of restlessness that you couldn't quite name. And you're awake. This doesn't mean you have any serious problems. In most cases, it's simply a matter of how and when you eat. But it's a sign worth paying attention to. Researchers from the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism have documented that nighttime blood glucose variations are more common in adults over 60, precisely because glucose metabolism becomes less efficient with age. A very heavy dinner late at night, followed by nothing until breakfast, can create exactly that scenario. Just like skipping dinner altogether and going to bed on an empty stomach. Balance is what the body seeks, and when it doesn't find it, it lets us know at 3 in the morning. But in a moment, I'll show you the mistake that many people make without realizing it, and which turns a simple awakening into a completely wasted night. Before that, there's an organ that works tirelessly while you sleep, and few people associate it with sleep quality. That's the next sign. Block 4, sign number 3. Your liver may be working more than it should. In traditional Chinese medicine, there is an age-old concept that associates the liver with the period between 1 and 3 in the morning. For centuries, Eastern doctors observed that patients with liver problems frequently woke up during this time frame. For a long time, Western medicine treated this observation as folklore. But recent research in the Journal of Hepatology has begun to shed very interesting scientific light on this relationship. The liver doesn't rest when you sleep. On the contrary, nighttime is one of the periods of greatest metabolic activity for this organ. It's when it processes and neutralizes substances that entered the body during the day. Medications, first and foremost. Most adults over 60 take at least one medication on a continuous basis. Many take 3, 4, or 5. Each of these medications passes through the liver to be metabolized. And this process has its own rhythm, often intensified in the early hours of the morning. In addition to medications, the liver processes fats, filters toxins, regulates hormones, and produces bile. It's a power plant working in shifts. And when this work is more intense than usual, whether because you ate a fattier meal, because the alcohol from dinner is still circulating, or because your medications have interactions that increase the liver's workload, the heat generated by this intense metabolism can be enough to alter your body temperature and disrupt sleep. I'm not talking about liver disease. I'm talking about the normal functioning of an organ that, after 60, simply needs more time and resources to do the same job it did before. A feeling of lightness after waking up, perhaps a slightly bitter taste in the mouth, a tiredness that doesn't go away with sleep. These can be signs that your liver is asking for more attention than you've been giving it. But the next sign is often ignored even more, and it's one of the simplest to correct. Block 5, sign number 4, silent dehydration. How many times have you woken up with a dry mouth without paying any attention to it? Probably many, and you probably didn't connect that moment with the issue of sleeping poorly. But nighttime dehydration is one of the most underestimated factors when it comes to waking up at 3 in the morning, especially after the age of 60. Here's what happens in the body as we age. The sensation of thirst diminishes, not a little, significantly. Research from the National Institutes of Health shows that older adults have a thirst response up to 50% less efficient than younger adults. This means your body may need water without you feeling thirsty, without any noticeable warning during the day. You arrive home at night without having hydrated properly. You enter a room with air conditioning or with the heater on during the American winter, which dries the air even more. You breathe for 6-7 hours. You lose water through breathing, perspiration, and nocturnal metabolic processes. And at 3 in the morning, your body detects that the levels are too low. Your heart needs to work a little harder to pump the more viscous blood. Your blood pressure fluctuates slightly, and you wake up. Certain medications amplify this effect. Diuretics, which many people take for blood pressure, increase fluid loss. Antihistamines, widely used for allergies, have a drying effect on mucous membranes. Some antidepressants and bladder medications also contribute to this. The good news is that this is one of the simplest causes to address. A glass of water in the late afternoon, a bottle by your bedside, mindful attention to hydration throughout the day. These things can make a difference you wouldn't expect. But now let's talk about the sign that, when present, is one of the most important to recognize. Because it doesn't just affect sleep. It affects the heart, the brain, blood pressure, and metabolism. And many people who have this problem don't know it. Block 6, sign number 5, sleep apnea. There is a condition that affects more than 22 million Americans, according to the American Sleep Apnea Association. And if you are over 65, the likelihood of having this condition and not knowing it is significantly high. We're talking about sleep apnea. Apnea is a word that comes from Greek and literally means without breath. And that's exactly what happens. During sleep, the throat muscles relax in such a way that the airway becomes partially or completely obstructed. Breathing stops for a few seconds, sometimes for longer. The brain detects the low level of oxygen in the blood and sends an alarm signal that wakes the body, briefly, often without the person being aware of it. These micro-awakenings can happen dozens or even hundreds of times a night. The person wakes up in the morning feeling like they slept for hours, but feels no rest at all. Sometimes they wake up with a headache, sometimes with a completely dry mouth. Sometimes the partner in bed is the one who notices first, the snoring, the pauses in breathing, the sound of someone choking slightly in the middle of the night. But sometimes there's no partner to alert them, and the person continues living with this problem for years, thinking it's simply a sign of aging. No, it's not. Sleep apnea is not inevitable. It is diagnosable and treatable. A test called polysomnography, which can even be done at home with modern equipment, is able to accurately identify the problem. And the treatments available today, from positive pressure devices to oral devices, have transformed the lives of thousands of people who spent decades sleeping poorly without understanding why. If you frequently snore, wake up feeling unrest, or have difficult to control high blood pressure, talk to your doctor about the possibility of evaluating your breathing during sleep. This conversation could be a game changer. Most people never associate this symptom with nighttime awakenings. But there's another level of waking up at 3 in the morning that goes far beyond the physical. And this one, in a way, is the deepest of all. Block 7, the role of hidden emotions. Sometimes it's not the body that wakes up first. It's the mind. Think about this for a moment. During the day, you are busy. There are things to do, people to talk to, shows to watch, tasks to complete. The noise of life fills the spaces where troublesome thoughts would try to settle. But at night, when the house is quiet and the body lies down, those spaces open up, and what was waiting in silence begins to speak. After 60, there are a number of losses and transitions that many people haven't fully processed. Retirement, for example, which American culture celebrates as an achievement, can be experienced internally as a loss of identity. For decades, your profession defined who you were. You were the engineer, the teacher, the manager, the nurse, and suddenly that's over. And no matter how much you said you were ready, part of you is still grieving for that version of yourself. There's also the issue of the children who left home, who built their lives in other states, sometimes in other countries. The weekly phone calls sometimes barely manage to capture the real distance. And you've learned not to complain, not to show it, to say that everything is fine. But at 3 in the morning, when there's no performance required, when there's no one for whom you need to appear strong, that loneliness appears in all its force. Grief is another common visitor in the early hours of the morning. And not just grief for people who have passed away, although that is deep and real. There is grief for a version of health that will not return. Grief for a marriage that didn't live up to its promise. Grief for dreams that were left behind. These accumulated losses inhabit the nocturnal mind with a different intensity than they do during the illuminated day. Family concerns also carry considerable weight. A child or grandchild going through difficulties. A relationship that is strained, a diagnosis in someone you love. You can't solve these things at 3 in the morning, but the mind doesn't respect that limit. Simulates, plans, fears, remembers, recognizing that there is an emotional dimension to nighttime awakenings is not weakness, it's intelligence. Because when you understand that part of what's happening is the mind asking for attention for something that wasn't processed during daylight, you can start doing something about it. Not at midnight, but during the day with intention and care. And that explains a lot. Stick with me because the next part reveals what's really happening inside your brain at that exact moment. Block 8. What happens in the brain at 3 a.m.? Let's step inside your brain for a moment, not with complicated technical terms, but with an image that might make everything clearer. Imagine your brain has 2 systems that work alternately. The first is the alert system, the one that keeps you awake, focused, and responsive. It's mainly fueled by cortisol and adrenaline. The second is the rest system, the one that allows for deep sleep, recovery, and memory consolidation. It's primarily managed by melatonin and adenosine, a substance that accumulates during the day and generates that progressive feeling of tiredness. During a healthy night's sleep, these 2 systems work in harmony. The sleep system dominates the first hours of the night when sleep is deepest. After midnight, sleep becomes progressively lighter, and between 2 and 4 in the morning, the brain enters a transitional mode, technically called second half-night REM sleep, where brain activity closely resembles the activity we experience when we are awake. It is at this moment that any warning sign has the ability to cross the threshold of sleep. Cortisol begins its gradual increase, preparing the body for the awakening that will come in the morning. Body temperature begins to rise subtly. Metabolic processes intensify. The brain begins to consolidate emotional memories. And this process can sometimes activate worries or feelings that were left in limbo during the day. Melatonin, which peaks around midnight and 1 in the morning, is already declining. And in older adults, this decline can be more abrupt because the pineal gland, responsible for melatonin production, loses efficiency with aging. This is why many adults over 60 feel that sensation of sleeping reasonably well in the early hours of the night, but after a certain point, sleep becomes fragmented. Neurotransmitters also play a role in this dance. Serotonin, which contributes to well-being and emotional stability during the day, is a precursor to melatonin at night. When serotonin levels are lower, which can happen for nutritional, emotional, or age-related reasons, melatonin production is also affected, and the sleep cycle loses some of its stability. Understanding this physiology isn't just academic curiosity. It's power, because when you know what's happening inside you in that quiet moment at 3 in the morning, you stop being afraid of it. And when you stop being afraid, you stop feeding the very cycle that was keeping you awake. Block 9, True Stories and Identification. Over the past few years, I've spoken with many people who have experienced what you may be experiencing now. Let me introduce you to 3 of them. The first is Thomas, 72 years old, a former university professor from North Carolina. Thomas retired full of plans: travel, carpentry projects, time with his grandchildren. But what he didn't expect was that the structure his work routine provided was actually what held his thoughts in place during the day. Without it, at night, those thoughts would all come at once. He would wake up at 3:30 practically every night with a mental list of things he needed to resolve, most of which were unsolvable at that hour. After a conversation with his doctor and some changes to his nighttime routine, which we will explore shortly, Thomas returned to sleeping regularly in just under 3 months. He says the most significant change was understanding that the problem wasn't sleep itself. It was the silence that sleep brought. The second person is Margaret, 68 years old, widowed for 2 years, a resident of Phoenix, Arizona. Margaret lost her husband after 41 years of marriage and learned the hard way that grief doesn't respect schedules. During the day, she managed to keep busy, go out with friends, take care of the house. But at 3 in the morning, when the side of the bed still seemed too big, the grief appeared in full force. She described how she felt she was waking up not because she had slept enough, but because her husband's absence woke her up before she did. Margaret found support in a group of widows in her community and began a simple nightly writing practice. A few minutes writing what she was feeling before going to sleep, which gradually created a space for the emotions that previously only found an outlet at 3 in the morning. The third case is that of a couple, David and Carol. He's 71 years old. She's 66. They lived in a suburb of Seattle, retired for some years, and in reasonable health. Both woke up regularly during the night, but for different reasons. David had undiagnosed sleep apnea, discovered after Carol insisted he see a specialist because of his snoring. Carol, in turn, was taking a diuretic for blood pressure that caused her to wake up to go to the bathroom, and the process of falling back asleep was becoming progressively more difficult. With appropriate treatment for David's apnea and an adjustment to Carol's medication schedule, done with medical guidance, both improved significantly, and something interesting happened. With better sleep, their relationship also improved. The irritability they both attributed to age was, in large part, chronic sleep deprivation. These 3 stories have something in common. In none of the cases was the problem sleep itself. Sleep was the messenger. The message was something else. And understanding this difference completely changes the approach. Block 10 to 7 habits that can help. Now let's talk about something concrete. Not magic formulas, not miracle supplements, not promises that seem too good to be true. Let's talk about habits that are scientifically based and that can make a real difference in the quality of your sleep. The first habit is to maintain a regular sleep and wake schedule, even on weekends. This sounds too simple, I know, but it's one of the most powerful habits for regulating your circadian rhythm. When you go to bed and wake up at the same time every day, you essentially reprogram your internal clock. The body anticipates sleep, begins to produce melatonin more consistently, and the structure of your nights becomes more predictable. Many sleep experts say that if you could only adopt one habit from this list, it should be this one. The second habit is to reduce caffeine after midday. Caffeine has a half-life of 5 to 7 hours in the body. This means that half of the caffeine from your 3 p.m. coffee is still active in your system at 10 p.m. In older adults, caffeine metabolism is even slower. That afternoon coffee that seems harmless may be one of the culprits behind fragmented sleep at 3 a.m. The third habit is strategic hydration. Don't wait until bedtime to hydrate. Distribute your water intake throughout the day, with the majority in the morning and afternoon. Reduce fluid consumption in the 2 hours before bed to minimize trips to the bathroom, but ensure you arrive at night well hydrated. A glass of water by your bed, in case you wake up thirsty, also helps. The fourth habit is exposure to natural light during the day. Going for a walk in the morning, even if it's just for 15 or 20 minutes, has a profound impact on the circadian rhythm. Sunlight entering the eyes signals to the brain that it's time to be awake and helps it calibrate melatonin production for the night. Research shows that older adults who regularly expose themselves to natural light during the day sleep, on average, 1 hour more per night than those who stay predominantly indoors. The fifth habit is eating a balanced dinner at the right time. A light dinner, eaten at least 2 hours before bedtime, with a good amount of protein and complex carbohydrates, helps keep glucose levels stable overnight. Avoid very heavy, very fatty, or very late meals. And if you tend to wake up feeling restless or slightly dizzy at 3 in the morning, a small protein snack before bed, such as a handful of nuts or a glass of warm milk, can help stabilize glucose levels overnight. The sixth habit is to incorporate movement into your day. I'm not talking about intense exercise at night, which can have a stimulating effect. I'm talking about regular physical activity during the day: walking, swimming, yoga, tai chi, anything you enjoy that gets your body moving. Studies show that physically active people have significantly deeper sleep and fewer nighttime interruptions. Exercise also helps reduce accumulated cortisol and releases endorphins that contribute to emotional well-being. The seventh habit is to create a nighttime wind-down routine. The brain isn't a switch you turn on and off. It needs a gradual transition between the alert state of the day and the restful state of the night. This could mean light reading, a warm bath, a 10-minute guided meditation, writing down 3 things you're grateful for, or a quiet conversation. What doesn't work for the vast majority of people is going straight from the stressful news on television or the stimulating social media to bed expecting sleep to come naturally. But there's a mistake few people talk about, and it could be the biggest sleep saboteur after 60. Stay with me. Block 11, the mistake millions of people make. You wake up at 3 in the morning, your eyes open, and what's the first thing you do? If you're like most people, you look at the clock. It seems innocent. It seems natural. It even seems necessary. After all, you want to know what time it is. But that moment, that exact second when your eyes focus on the numbers on the clock or your cell phone screen, could be the beginning of a cycle that will keep you awake for another hour or 2. Here's the psychological mechanism that kicks in immediately after you see the time. Let's say the clock reads 3:12. Automatically, a mental calculator goes off. It's 3 in the morning. The alarm is at 6:30. That means I only have 3 hours and 18 minutes of sleep left. That's not enough. I need to sleep now. Why am I not sleeping? If I don't sleep, I'll be exhausted tomorrow. I have that important appointment. I can't be tired. Why does this keep happening to me? In a matter of seconds, you went from a state of quiet semi-consciousness to a state of full alertness, fueled by anxiety, pressure, and worry. And do you know what this sequence of thoughts releases? Cortisol, exactly the hormone you least need at 3 in the morning. Sleep behavior researchers call this sleep performance anxiety. It's when the act of trying to sleep becomes the biggest barrier to sleep itself. The more you worry about not sleeping, the more the brain's alert system is activated, and the less the rest system is able to take over. The clock transforms an awakening that could last 2 minutes into a 2-hour wakefulness. And the more nights this happens, the more the brain creates an association between waking up in the middle of the night and periods of anxiety and frustration. Over time, the early morning hours themselves begin to be perceived as threatening, and sleep during that period becomes even more difficult. The solution: turn the clock towards the wall. Place your cell phone face down. Don't look at the time. This requires practice because the habit is deeply ingrained. But it's one of the most impactful changes you can make. In the first week, it will seem strange. In the second week, it starts to get easier. And in a few weeks, you'll realize that waking up in the middle of the night is no longer an anxiety-filled event and has returned to what it should be: simply a moment of transition between sleep stages. Block 12. What to do when you wake up at 3 a.m. So, what should you do when you wake up at 3 in the morning from today onwards? First, don't look at the clock. Resisting that urge is the first and most important step. Second, observe your breathing. Don't try to force sleep. Just breathe, slowly. 1 inhale counting to 4, a pause counting to 2, and exhale counting to 6. This activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the system that slows down the body, lowers cortisol, and prepares the body to return to rest. You don't need to be asleep to benefit from this. Just breathing consciously already reduces alertness. Third, if the thought starts swirling, don't fight it. Acknowledge it. You can simply say to yourself mentally, "I'm thinking. That's okay. I'll let this thought pass." You don't need to solve anything at 3 in the morning. You don't need to make any decisions. You don't need to plan anything. Everything that existed before you fell asleep will still exist in the morning when you have more resources to deal with it. Fourth, if after 20 minutes you really can't fall back asleep, get up. Yes, get up. Go to another room. Sit in a comfortable place with low light. Read something quiet. Listen to soft music. Write down what you're thinking. Sometimes just getting it out is enough to clear your head. Then, when you feel sleepiness returning, go back to bed. Sleep experts call this stimulus control. The idea is to ensure that your brain associates the bed only with sleep and rest, and not with wakefulness, anxiety, or frustration. When you lie in bed for hours without being able to sleep, you inadvertently train your brain to associate the bed with insomnia. By getting out of bed when this happens, you break this conditioning. Fifth, in the morning, avoid overcompensating. If you slept poorly, the instinct is to sleep late or nap for long hours. But this can further disrupt your circadian rhythm and create a difficult cycle to break. Get up at your normal time. Go out into the sunlight. Move around. Let your body recalibrate. One bad night doesn't set the standard. What sets the standard are the habits you maintain even on difficult days. Closing. Perhaps your body isn't trying to disrupt your sleep. On the contrary, he might be trying to talk to you. Think about everything we explored today. The cortisol that rises when there are unspoken worries. The glucose that fluctuates when dinner wasn't adequate. The liver that works tirelessly processing what the day brought. The dehydration that the body didn't know how to ask for in any other way. The breathing that stops and starts again when you should be resting. And the mind, faithful, that keeps everything that didn't have space during the noise of the day. At 3 a.m, when the house is silent and the world seems paused, their bodies and minds finally get the attention they can't get during daylight hours. And they use that moment to say what they need to say. The question is not how to silence this awakening. The question is how to listen to it. Because when you start paying attention, not with alarm, not with anxiety, but with gentle curiosity, you begin to understand what needs to change. Sometimes it's something simple, like dinner time or a glass of water by the bedside. Sometimes it's something deeper, like a conversation that's been postponed, a loss that hasn't been fully felt, a loneliness that needs to be acknowledged before it can be addressed. You're not aging badly. You're aging with a body that still has a lot to say. And perhaps those 3 o'clock in the morning, instead of being a problem to be solved, are an invitation for you to get to know yourself better than you have at any other stage of your life. If this video touched you, if it made you think of someone who might be going through the same thing, please share it. No elaborate comment is needed. Sometimes a simple gesture like sending it to someone you love is enough to make that person feel less alone at 3 a.m. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Leave a like, and see us in the next video, where we'll continue exploring what it means to live after 60 with health, purpose, and dignity. Until then, take good care of yourself, and may your nights become increasingly peaceful.